Welcome into K-State Online. I'm Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. Monday, June 30th, here with some not so fun things to talk about if you're a K-State fan, because right around when it all went down, we had already done something for the day last week, and then we had KSO Classic, and so we didn't have anything ready to go and discuss last week on Ian Premer not choosing K-State. So that's what we're here to discuss today, give the final word on it, and where things stand as Ian Premer has decided that he will be leaving the state of Kansas and he will go to Notre Dame as the number one player in the state, and now makes back-to-back years where the top player in the state of Kansas has decided to leave and go somewhere else. And here we have Ian Premer with Notre Dame. Let's go through this process a little bit, Drew, because it was like pretty widely thought going into the morning that Premer committed then that all different types of people across different networks that follow this stuff were under the impression that, and nobody said that it was done. And I think that's the thing where people are getting confused a little bit on these sites, whether it's a crystal ball at 24/7 or it's a prediction, an RPM at on 3 or whatever it may be. It doesn't mean that, oh, this is done and this is happening. That's what these people think is going to happen. That's the whole point of it. That's why these things exist. It's never done until the recruit says that it's done, or in the transfer
It,
portal until an agent leaks it to one of like Joe Tipton or something.
and even then, it's never done.
So
Like it is never done until, at least for a high schooler, until they sign the dotted line. Transfers, it's like literally never done until they show up.
So I think there's some confusion there on people that thought that because these predictions were put out that, oh, it's done, it's going to happen. And typically you can't operate like that, because most of the people that are putting in predictions, you can go and look and see what their percentage correct is, and you'll say, oh, okay, that's pretty good. Like, for example, mine's at 94.59%. That's 105 out of 111. Then, you can go and look and see all the other predictions that are out there. But Steve Wiltfong, who is one of our top dogs in recruiting, he's at 91.13%. Now, that's pretty good because he's put in 800 predictions. So he's 729 for 800. DY 88.79%. He's 95 for 107. And he admitted, he said, hey, look, I thought it was going to be K-State. I put it in. I know people get mad when predictions get changed, so I'm just going to leave it and eat it. He had that before the commitment went down. Like, you can go through all these and you can just see that, okay, you can trust this process most of the time, but it's not a given, and it's certainly not an exact science in the era of dealing with decisions being made by 17-year-old kids. So everybody kind of thought it was going to be K-State in the morning, but again, not done is how that would be described. But we thought it was going to be K-State. That seemed to be the direction it was heading in. And you can go, across borders. Alec Bussey at the Iowa State 24/7 site, he thought it was going to be K-State. You can look at the 24/7 national people. They were saying that it was K-State or Iowa State. They thought it was going to be K-State, but Iowa State's right there. I think one of them even said Notre Dame and KU are totally out of it. It's not going to be Notre Dame or KU. And you can look at our counterparts at Go Power Cat. They also thought that it was going to be K-State. And so at some point in the afternoon portion, as the day was wearing on, that's when DY, it was alerted, hey, it's actually going to end up being Notre Dame. And where that came from seems kind of out of left field. So what I would tell people on this, if you're still questioning the information leak that came out and everything, there was momentum for some reason that people thought it was going to be K-State. But I don't know if this was somebody that was misinformed that was informing a lot of different people, or if the momentum seemed to be shifting in that way and something changed at the last minute. Or, I think the funniest thing to think about would be somebody in Ian Premer's camp like intentionally trying to lead people astray. And so all day, they can see this playing out and kind of have the last laugh and know, hey, 4 o'clock comes around or whatever time it was, it's going to be Notre Dame and everybody's going to be shocked. And it's honestly, that'd be a genius way to do things in this world of recruiting where most of the time it's not even really a surprise anymore. Like we talk about this on signing day and stuff. You kind of already know where all this, we don't get many true surprises in recruiting anymore. And whether it was a legitimate surprise or it was set up to be, Ian Premer to Notre Dame was a legitimate surprise because that information and that tide only really started to turn about 30 minutes before he made the commitment to Notre Dame public.
Yeah, it's unlike anything I've seen. And I've seen some people think that, like, oh, maybe like it was from the K-State camp that I was overconfident, thinking that it was going to be them. And it really wasn't, to be honest. It was just like a combination of talking to sources at other schools that kind of led everybody to think that it was going to be K-State because they were the most common answer. And that's just kind of how it goes sometimes, because I think that everybody was really kind of up in the air in terms of how everybody on staffs were at each of the 4 schools. We're all kind of up in the air until he announced Notre Dame. Like I think that everybody was kind of in kind of wait and see, and a little bit surprising when it ended up being Notre Dame, because I have never seen a collection of people across different networks, across different schools, all be kind of so wrong about this. And I don't think that I would change anything that we did, because we just followed all the tea leaves that everybody kept saying. Because when you hear one school so often from so many people from so many different teams, that's usually the correct answer. I mean, that is typically like you follow the 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah, and that's another good like kind of just peeling the curtain back on this industry is that sometimes those predictions happen where it is the recruit themselves have explicitly told one of us that, hey, on Wednesday, I'm picking K-State, or on Thursday, I'm picking Louisville or something like that. Like I can remember specifically, the 1 year that I spent where I had to be the main point on everything is when Wesley Watson committed to K-State. He just outright told Alec, like 2 days before he committed, yeah, it's going to be K-State. And so like, that's one where, but most of the time, it's okay. There's some good indicators here, and when you know that a decision is approaching, obviously these sites, they have them for a reason. It's because they get clicks, they get attention, so they want you to do it. You do sometimes have it on good authority it's happening, or you're just following along and go, okay, this makes sense. Like some of the basketball recruits that over the last couple of years, like K-State would end up in like a top 3 or 4 form, and you just go, well, they haven't, K-State hasn't had contact with them for weeks, months. I know it's not going to be K-State. This team doesn't have any roster spots. This team does. And you can go, okay, I can pinpoint it's going to be Mizzou for this kid. Like, that's just kind of how
Yeah.
this stuff works. Like it's a balance of those. And I think that's where people, they saw the tide shifting and going towards thinking it's going to be K-State. And that was the prediction by everybody. And a lot of people took that as gospel. And I'm not faulting those people for doing it because, again, as we just discussed, 90 to 95% of the time you can do that, and you're going to be just fine. This was just one of those where, again, I think we don't get many of them, but this was one of the all-time, oh, this is great. This is a great recruiting surprise. Like taking the K-State side out of it, because that obviously, we've said this before, it is much more fun and enjoyable to do this job when good things happen for K-State. People don't handle bad news well, if you've picked up on that, Drew. And so, like, taking that point out of it, just like in general, it's a great college football recruiting surprise, and we need more of those still in this sport.
Yeah, it really did take everybody, I think, by surprise. I mean, what makes this even tougher, and like why we had to really rely on what other people were kind of feeling and hearing, and how everybody kind of went about this, was Ian Premer was pretty quiet. from about March until he made his commitment announcement. And honestly, he didn't even really make his commitment announcement because Hayes Fawcett, someone that posted the graphic, uh, and then Premer just reposted it and added something about like "Go Irish" or something. So like he didn't even make the announcement himself. So that made it difficult. And I think that's why you kind of go about this and trying to figure out what other people think and how it all lines up, and why it all kind of lined it up for K-State. And this wasn't an easy recruitment, like you said, when Wesley Watson told Alec that he was going to commit. I've had many players on the current roster tell me when during their high school recruitment process that, hey, like I'm going to commit to K-State at like this time. But this was nothing like that. I mean, I even had a player one time during a K-State game tell me that he was going to commit like a day
I
later.
remember this.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't that easy. And I think that's why I think that you got to remember that you can't get them all right, but everybody's always going to remember the ones that are wrong. And that's kind of whatever. But there are still like points to that you can point out, like, oh, we had this nailed down. I mean, we even had that it was going to be Notre Dame before anybody else did. So that's something that if you're really looking at like, oh, well, you guys were wrong. Well, we still had that it was going to be Notre Dame before everybody else did. So that makes it hard. And then just if you're looking from a big picture perspective, what really happened here? I don't think, because I saw this was a rumor going around for much of the day Thursday and Friday. I don't think that there was a time where Ian Premer actually committed to K-State and then was telling everybody else and then backed off of it. I don't think that happened. If you really want how I'm starting to feel about this, and remember, again, we talk about how like Ian Premer just went silent for us and for a lot of different people. Ryan Wallace and Kevin Flaherty, their show on KCSN. Ryan Wallace said that he spoke with Ian Premer, and he still got it wrong. I mean, that's how tight-lipped that this recruitment was. I would say, big picture, looking at this, it was probably Notre Dame all along. Like I don't think that there was a point where he was like about to commit to K-State and didn't, or about to commit to Iowa State and didn't. I think if you really dive in and how this all kind of unfolded and how it has kind of came across in the days since, and this is why it's probably better that we waited and did just do like an instant reaction show kind of talking about it. I'm starting to come to the conclusion that I think that it was Notre Dame all along, and he just didn't tell anybody. And I think that most people just kind of assumed that it was going to be K-State or Iowa State. K-State because he grew up a K-State fan. I mean, I even pointed out multiple times throughout this, like he even went to K-State basketball games this past winter just as a fan. Iowa State was always mentioned because he was probably recruited the longest and probably the hardest, even harder than K-State at points by Iowa State, and had a really good relationship with Iowa State. KU was mentioned because KU has had a good class in state, had really good financial backing, just like K-State did to get it done. And then who does that leave that wasn't really talked about, Mason?
Yeah. Notre Dame.
They kind
And
of
so
just
much
were,
what we heard was, oh, he wants to stay closer to home. Like this is that was the
yes,
one thing that I think also started to become like a communal thought was, oh, this is gonna stay local. So then K State
K-State,
makes the
KU,
most sense.
K-State, KU, Iowa
KU,
State.
and then Iowa State. Okay, that's still doable. I mean, South Bend, Indiana, you're damn near Chicago, and like you can drive that, but it's not a fun drive and it's not an easy one. It takes a full day to do that. So like I think that played into it too.
No, it was a master class in like staying really tight-lipped. Like this is where all the information is out there nowadays on the internet, social media, and it's pretty easy to find out stuff if you really dive in and like want to hit it hard. this was one where I think most people would get wrong if they had all the information that was privy to them that we did. I mean, I have just kind of like joked about how if this was the opposite and K State was Notre Dame and Notre Dame was K State, that would have been awesome. Like to kind of go through this as like you were the team not really talked about at all, to the point where, depending on who you talk to, 24 hours before Premer announced Notre Dame, there were people that thought that Notre Dame was out.
Yeah.
So to like hear that and then the tide be swung like so far in your favor that he announces 24 hours later, like that would be an awesome feeling. But like being that it was K-State that kind of got the rug ripped out under them, it is probably the hardest part of all this. Oh, and then I'm just gonna say this because this really bothered me. If you're one of the KU burners that tweeted at Ian Premer, like, good decision, young man, to go to Notre Dame instead of K-State, when you were also in his top 4, that is some of the most loser behavior I have ever seen.
I mean, it is a wild train of thought there. I mean, that's, I think the other point to look at here is what is the fallout been from it? Like you say you think that it probably was just Notre Dame all along, and that everything was so tight lipped, and any breadcrumbs that we had, which were minuscule, people just pieced together and thought, well, then it's probably going to be K State. And that, I mean, this kind of goes back to what we talked about a week, 2 weeks ago when we talked about Ian Premer. I think it was ahead of his official visit, where we just said it just depends on who you talk to in
Yeah.
this, on what side of the story you're going to get. And I don't think at any point any staff felt very confident. And we see that play out here now. In terms of, do you, do you think that K State did anything wrong here, that they didn't put their best foot forward to try and land Ian Premer like they were able to do with Lincoln Cure?
Honestly, that's where it's tough, because I think that you can only really do so much before, like, when does it become too much that you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
I think that they did about as much as they possibly could have done. I mean, up until like they had a good financial backing to go with this, a really good relationship, recruited him for a long time, recruited him very hard, got the last visit, got the last word in before him and his family went on vacation. Like they did. I mean, up into the point where like K-State's basketball staff even extended an offer to him. So like I don't know what they could have done that was different. Sometimes, and people hate hearing this because it's a results based business, but sometimes you can do everything and not end up getting the prospect that you're going after. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked a little bit lighter about this 2 cycles ago with Michael Boganowski. Like, what could K-State have done differently? Sometimes you can do everything correct, or think that you did everything correct, and it still not go your way.
Especially when you're in the mix with teams that are of the stature of Notre Dame and Oklahoma. Like
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
where this wasn't. It would have felt different if Ian Premer, if we go through this whole rigmarole again, and it was Iowa State that was the stunning selection
yes,
on Thursday last week instead of it being Notre Dame, because then you're really scratching your head and going, well, how do you lose the in-state kid to Iowa State when you probably had at least financial packages that were matched there and everything? It's a totally different deal, and I bring it up all the time. Like, everybody is different in the way that they determine where they want to go to school, in terms of even just regular people to be regular students. Where, hey, for some people they are a-okay going to school in their backyard, and for some that's like I'm from Hutch. There are people I knew, they were perfectly fine going to Hutchinson Community College or Wichita State. I would have hated being that close to home. It wouldn't have felt like I was actually going off to school and learning how to be on my own. 2 hours, Manhattan, that was good enough distance for me. Now, also, if I had grown up closer to Manhattan and I grew up in a K-State family and loved it as much as I did, I probably still would have gone there. I would have said that's good enough for me. But I know that there are other people that think, 2-3 hours, that's not enough. If I have the opportunity to go explore a different part of the world, I'm going to do it. And you add in the extra element here of playing college football, and then a player certainly of Ian Premer's stature, you're thinking about the next level and parlaying that into something different. You also take into consideration, like, South Bend, Indiana it gets you away from home, so maybe you don't want to stay at home. And then on top of that, like, Notre Dame's got a fantastic track record with tight ends, and you talk about, K-State and KU being on even footing with what they could offer financially here. What those schools were able to offer financially to a player of Ian Premer's stature, that's probably just a drop in a bucket for Notre Dame to be able to give a kid top 50 kid like Ian Premer. They can match K-State, KU, the top of what they would do any day, because K-State can match one or two kids to that level. Notre Dame can go deeper on that, and I just think that you have to remember that. Something like players like Avery Johnson and Lincoln Cure, both at the end of the day decided that they were comfortable with Manhattan being where they were, and they wanted to take on the role of being the in-state kind of saviors of the program or whatever. You can flip to the other side. Like, you can look at all the kids in KU's football class right now. For many years, there were kids that made the decision that they didn't want to go to KU to do that. You have a full class right now in 2026 that they've decided they do want to take on that challenge and go to KU. But it's not for everybody. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I think sometimes people lose that train of thought, because, like, I know what distances would have been too close for me, and I didn't even have the opportunity to go and do, whatever this was. Like, I think about, I'll use just a real person example. One of my former colleagues at k-StateOnline, Gabe Swartz. He was probably just going to end up going to KU or somewhere locally out of high school in Kansas City. Then he had the opportunity to go to Arizona State and study journalism down there. And it's like, oh, you give a guy like that the opportunity to go to Arizona State, he's going to do it. And that was perfect for him. But there would have been people that would have said, I don't know that I want to go that far away. So I just think that sometimes people lose that aspect of it and want to try and make it all about, K-State failed here or whatever. Yeah, K-State didn't get Ian Premer, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they failed in this recruitment. I mean, you could say the same thing for KU and Iowa State, because I think KU and Iowa State also did good jobs in this recruitment. I don't think they failed. They just weren't the winners for the prize.
Yeah, and then also, like, you talk about Notre Dame's track record with tight ends, what they can do financially. This was also a team that was literally just in the national championship.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they are no slouch,
and that's why. And that's why with the Lincoln Cure thing, why Oregon was always going to be that threat, where you think of for Lincoln Cure, the allure of getting to go that far away and go to a program of that stature and be treated, similar way that he was getting treated by K-State. Like, they were going to match everything K-State did to try and get him. They wanted Lincoln Cure really bad. But at the end of the day, he made that decision where, it's some people will say, oh, that's loser talk, or, it's unfortunate that it's this way. And it is unfortunate that this statement that I'm about to say is true. But players like Lincoln Cure and Avery Johnson made the decision that it doesn't matter to them that they won't win a national championship playing college football, because we know that no team in the Big 12 and all but like two teams in the ACC, they are not going to win a national championship in college football. The way it's constructed now, the way things have played out, the imbalance of power and money, it just isn't going to happen unless, some wild, crazy thing, lightning strikes and you get lucky. It's just highly unlikely it's going to happen. And ultimately, when you're making decisions, we are a world that's so about winning, which I think is important. I think it's good to want to win, that, guys like Avery Johnson and Lincoln Cure made the decision that coming to K-State, trying to win Big 12 titles, trying to get into the college football playoff for the first time, and then see what happens, they are good with that being their main focus of content, or of what they're trying to achieve. And then, like, you can't fault anybody that would make the decision, well, I would rather go up that level. Like, Braden Williams, he's the other in-state player that's going to Clemson, right?
Yeah.
Same type of deal, where, Like K-State, KU, no doubt would have matched financially to try and get a player like that. But he wants to go to Clemson, and you go to Clemson. I know it's not been a great stretch for Dabo, relatively speaking, but you've got a chance to win a national championship at Clemson still. So that's like that. I think that's the other thing to factor into all of this that's important. Now, I mentioned Lincoln Cure's name a lot here. I think that's another question that would be on people's minds, Drew. Do you think in any way that even if it wasn't a top 5 reason or like a main talking point, do you think at all it was in the back of Ian Premer's head when this decision was made? Or I won't even phrase it that way. Is it just impossible to make this decision and not have that factor in a little bit? That the year before you, Lincoln Cure, same type of prospect, same position, like same expectations and all of that. He came in, got that fanfare, and is in line and has a year ahead of you. Like, I think it would be hard to completely erase that from your decision making process, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to erase that from your thinking process, kind of like you talked about, because same position, western half of the state, around the same recruiting profiles, even if you dive in even deeper. Like, it's not like he's going to be far and away the best tight end at Notre Dame, but I think that some of that probably
The
plays.
expectations are different,
Yes, but the
though.
but the expectations are different, and it goes back to like how much do you really want to stay in Kansas? Because like Joe Wadding is at Notre Dame, but that's the only Kansas player that they have. Where like you could make the argument that he wouldn't even be the best at his own position in the state of Kansas at K State. Like that does make it pretty tough when you really dive into it, because again, it's not like Notre Dame is lacking in talent at the tight end position, because they're not, and they have another 4-star tight end in this class even. But you kind of get away from the expectations of, okay, well, you're really really good, rated out of high school, and you're from Kansas, and you play the same tight or position as Lincoln Cure. Like that's just a kind of a whole other like pressure that's added into it. But if you really want to know what's going to go down here with what does K-State do at tight end, because I imagine that was on one of the things that you wanted to talk about a little bit.
Well, yeah. Let's finish this up by talking about the fallout on the K-State side of things. We'll start in the micro, this position specifically, tight end. What's the move here now?
In the micro at tight end, there's a couple options. Lawson McGraw, we've talked about as an athlete. He's either going to play offense or defense. Tight end is one of the positions that has been kind of floated out there. So if they stand pat and don't chase the tight end, number one, it could mean that Lawson McGraw is just moving to tight end, and that's just going to be where he starts. But number two, it could just mean that they want to bring everybody in that tight end room back, because everybody can return in the tight end room for 2026. So it could mean one of those two things. If you want to stay again locally, there is a tight end at Pratt High School, Arlie Morrell, currently committed to Colorado State. K-State has shown a little bit of interest and visited him during the contact period in the spring. If they really want to add a true tight end, because he's more of a true tight end, where Lawson McGraw, we don't really know where he's going to end up, that could be an avenue that they pursue. There's also the possibility that it's neither of those two, and they reevaluate, because every single staff does this. It's not just a K-State thing. But after the summer, there's a whole reshuffle of a recruiting board and what it really looks like going forward. So like it could just be somebody else. But like those are two guys that I think that I would pay attention to, about one, where Lawson McGraw ends up, and then two, does K-State, because I mean we've talked about it, they only have 2 players in state in this cycle. Do they really press and get somebody like Arlia Morel later on in the cycle.
Well, I guess the other thing too would be here, if on a scale of 1 to 10, what would the chances be of an Ian Premer flip? Because I think they'd be unlikely, but I think people would also leave that out there as a question mark or be interested.
Probably like a 2 or a 3. Anything is possible, which is why it's not like a 1 or a 0. But 2 or 3, because I have some low confidence in it potentially happening. The only way that I could actually see this potentially happening would be like if Marcus Freeman were to get a new job, like specifically like an NFL type job. That would be like the only way that I could potentially see it happening. But like that isn't so like impossible that I have it as a 1.
Yeah. All right. Let's go out into the big picture here of K State recruiting now, because one of the talking points that we would have had come whatever day last week that this went down, if it was K State, was here they go now. In the last 4 classes, they've taken in 5 of the top 10 rated recruits in that stretch of time, and instead they don't get Premer. Really, their success in state was hinging upon that because now it's guys like Lamarcus Barber and Lawson McGraw, fine pickups, but they don't have the same magnitude and stature. So Ian Premer was going to be the thing that kind of held this look together for you from an in-state perspective. I think the informed would go, okay, yeah, it's 1 year. We'll see what happens moving forward. Obviously, KU's had a great cycle with this. K-State just didn't have the inside track for a lot of these guys. Is that a trend that will continue long term? And now that they don't land Premer, where is the concern of, or just general thought on where K-State's recruiting class ends up in 2026? Because you take a big hit by not landing a big fish like that to boost your stature, your ranking, and just the general consensus thought that people were going to have about your class.
So to start, in-state, this was always going to be a big KU year. I don't see that really being a concern. This kind of seems like more like a blip than like a sign of future things that could happen. Especially like we talked about this in the video that never got posted about Premer. But the 2027 class is kind of like up in the air about what it's going to be in the state. Like, I think that right now there's 3 Power 4 prospects, and then it's all kind of like wait and see. So we'll see what happens there. Cooper Olmacht and Gus Corsair, 2 guys that have K-State offers. K-State's going to recruit them very, very hard up until the end. And I think that they're right now K-State has the inside track probably for both of them. Looking at where this class could end up for K-State, I think it's still going to end up in the top 50. It probably won't be as highly ranked as 23 or 25. Maybe similar to 24. I think the 24 class was 42nd. I could see this class ending at like the 45 range, which, and this is where, they've really, again, hit their stride like I've talked about. But for that to be kind of like a disappointing class is just really shows where K-State is right now. Like before the 23 cycle, I think that K-State only had a top 50 class like 2 times in the last like 15 years. And now we're talking about potentially having like the 45th class, ranked class, and that be the lowest of the last 4 years.
Just it's an interesting position that K-State is in right now, given the outcomes here, and we'll keep an eye on the next moves. July 4th, Tucker Ashford is the next big name to keep an eye on. That he will be making a decision. A player that does he already have 4-star status from a few sites, maybe, or he's I think he's going to end up with it at some point.
He's going to end up with an industry ranked 4-star at some point because before the merge, because we are recording this before the merge, He's like an 88.93, and he needs to be an 89 to be a 4-star.
Okay.
So he's going to be a 4-star at one
his
point.
On3 and ESPN ratings, he is a 4-star, and those are about to account for 2/3 of the ranking with 24/7. So it does seem in all likelihood, but that's a big one. It's K-State and Houston. You think down to those two for Ashford?
Yeah, and I would classify that as probably a coin flip going into it. So buckle up, because this is about to happen again.
Just what folks wanted to hear.
And then Mason Lewis is set to potentially announce his commitment announcement tomorrow, July 1st. Who knows? Every school that has talked with Lewis after he has taken a visit has been told that they're his favorite. So again, who knows? That is a recruitment.
Good to have favorites.
That is a recruitment that even if K-State were to be the team that gets picked tomorrow, that's a recruitment to monitor until signing day.
So you're saying Mason Lewis is like me with my daughters, where I'll tell one of them they're my favorite and then turn around and the other one's my favorite.
Yes. That it's a recruitment where nobody feels comfortable because everybody keeps being told that they're the favorite. So, and that typically means that there could be a flip later on.
Well, and just so people know, neither of them are my actual favorite. It will always be my old geriatric dog Mitzi. So they're competing for second place, and that's good. That always drives you. We'll be back throughout the rest of the week. We got plenty of stuff coming your way. With 4th of July, we'll only do 4 shows this week. Holiday. Take the holidays when you can get them. But we will have KSO Classic this week for you. It'll come out sometime on Thursday or Friday, and you'll be able to relive 2006 K-State and Texas football with us. And then Monday, a week from today, we'll all be traveling to Texas by plane, by car. 2 of us by plane, 1 of us by car. I'll let you guess who's going by car.
I was trying to think of who or like what the other mode of transportation was going to be.
Yeah, no, we got 2 planes and 1 car, all going separate. No carpooling this time. So take that, haters. To all the KU losers that Drew called out earlier.
Mike Vernon and Shambles, because we're all traveling separate.
By the way, this is why we need real football content next week at Media Days, which it won't really be that. It may just stir the pot more. I'm so sick of seeing the fighting on social media already between K-State and KU fans, and mostly burner accounts, and then people with personal accounts that tweet like a burner account, which is somehow more embarrassing than, like I actually like it at some stage. Like that's what the burner accounts are for now. At times they're funny. At times I'm like, this is annoying. This is exhausting. Like, why are you going to fight about this? This makes no sense. People are misinformed. Like the KU K-State stadium debate that people are fighting about. I can't wrap my head around, whatever. But hey, at the end of the day, you can't win an argument with a stupid person. That's what I always told some of my acquaintances in high school that I hung out with. Anyways, I'm tired of it. I'm ready for real stuff to happen, and we'll have it soon enough because we are getting closer and closer to the 2025 Aer Lingus College Football Classic, Week 0, game number 1 of the season. It involves K-State and Iowa State, August 23rd, 2025, in the Emerald Isle. Cats2Ireland.com is where you need to go for travel, hospitality, and ticket info to make sure you're there to see the season kick off and watch the Cats and Clones in Dublin, Ireland. So head over to Cats2Ireland.com. They'll hook you up if you still want to get over there, or you're already going to be there, but you're looking for a great way to experience it, and you need to add some things to your trip. They'll help you out with everything over there. For Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. We're out of here. Thanks for watching and listening to K-State Online. We are back again tomorrow to talk more K-State football.